Chief Okoro's voice thundered through the house like a breaking storm. The old man slammed his walking stick on the polished tiles, the sharp crack echoing across the living room. His eyes, usually calm, authoritative, and proud, were now red with fury. The portraits of ancestors on the wall seemed to shake from the vibration of his rage. "Chima!" he roared. "I said give your sister that business. Are you deaf, or have you suddenly forgotten who your father is?" Chima stood frozen, unable to blink, unable to breathe. He had faced many challenges in his life, poverty, betrayal, heartbreak, but nothing prepared him for this. His business, Chimex Tech Hub, wasn't just a company. It was his history, written in sweat, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. He built it from scratch, selling phone chargers on the roadside while others mocked him. He had been robbed, cheated, rained on, and laughed at, yet he never gave up. And now, his own father wanted him to hand it over like it meant nothing. "Papa," Chima finally breathed, his voice trembling. "I don't understand. Why would you even say that? Adora doesn't want the business. She doesn't even—" "Silence," Chief Okoro barked, raising his hand. "Do not argue with me. If you love me, if you respect this family, you will obey." The words hit Chima like a blow to the chest. Adora, who had been standing near the staircase, looked from her father to her brother, panic written all over her face. "Daddy, please," she whispered. "I didn't ask for the company. Chima worked for—" "You will keep quiet," the father snapped, turning on her. "Both of you think you can question me under my own roof?" Chima swallowed hard. His heart pounded, each beat tightening the knot in his chest. "Papa," he said slowly, "this business, it's all I have. Everything I am came from that company. Why do you want to take it from me?" Chief Okoro stepped closer, gripping his walking stick so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Because if you don't give her that company," he said, voice dropping to a chilling whisper, "then you have lost me forever." The room fell into a suffocating silence. Adora's hand flew to her mouth. Chima felt his knees weaken. At that moment, he realized something terrifying. This was not just anger. This was an ultimatum that could break their family permanently. Chima stood in silence, staring at his father, but his mind had already drifted far away. Back to the beginning, back to the days before Chimex Tech Hub even had a name. He remembered sleeping on a thin mat inside a dusty little container shop, the kind people walked past without noticing. When night fell, he would drag down the rusty shutter while mosquitoes hummed like angry spirits around him. At dawn, he'd wake up stiff and cold, push the shutter up again, and force a smile onto his face before customers arrived. He had no employees then, no investors, no family support. Just 3 second-hand chargers, a few cheap earphones, and the stubborn belief that poverty would not be his final address. While other young men stayed out late drinking, Chima stayed awake learning how to repair phone screens. He watched YouTube videos on borrowed data, practiced on broken phones neighbors threw away, and slowly, painfully, became good at it. Sometimes he worked until 2 a.m., hunched over a tiny table with nothing but a battery-powered lamp. Sometimes he didn't eat for 2 days straight. Sometimes rain leaked through the roof and soaked his only spare shirt. But he kept going. He still remembered one night vividly, a night that nearly broke him. Heavy rain had flooded the shop, destroying almost half of his small stock. He sat in the cold water, hugging himself, shaking from exhaustion. That night, he cried, quietly, bitterly. not because of the loss, but because he felt deeply alone. Not even his family knew how hard he struggled. Not even his father, who now demands the entire company, had ever asked, "My son, how are you surviving?" But Chima didn't quit. He wiped his tears, cleaned the mess, counted his remaining items, and started again at dawn. Slowly, customers grew. People began to trust him. He expanded to a bigger shop. Then he hired 2 boys to help, then 3 more. And eventually, after years of grinding, years of hunger, years of pain, he registered the company, Chimex Tech Hub. That name meant everything to him because it wasn't just a brand. It was proof that he had built something with his bare hands. And Adora? He loved his sister, but she had lived a very different life. She never knew hunger. She never had to hustle under the sun. She never had to pray for one customer to buy something so she could afford gari. She went straight from secondary school to a comfortable university life. Vacations, soft allowance, freedom. She had dreams, yes, but none of them involved business. So hearing their father shout that she should take what he built, hearing him threaten to disown Chima if he refused, it felt like someone was cutting open an old wound he had buried deep. Back in the present moment, Chima blinked away the memory.
He looked at his father, voice tight from the storm inside him. "Papa, do you know what that business cost me?" But Chief Okoro didn't answer. Instead, he turned away, as if the truth would burn him if he looked at his son too long. And in that heavy silence, Chima realized the battle was far from over. The tension in the room thickened like a fog that refused to lift. Chima stared at his father's rigid back, still trying to understand how the man who raised him, stern, disciplined, but always rational, could demand something so impossible. Adara stepped closer to Chima, her eyes red and confused. "Chima, maybe we should just calm down." But Chima wasn't calm. He wasn't even close. His voice cracked as he whispered, "But why? Such a decision from Papa. What could make him turn against me like this?" His question hung in the air like smoke, curling around all 3 of them. Chief Okoro slowly turned, and for the first time that evening, the fire in his eyes softened. He exhaled shakily, lowering himself into his favorite wooden chair, a chair he only sat in when something weighed heavily on his heart. "Sit, Chima," he said quietly. Chima hesitated, but the sudden shift in tone made him obey. Adara sank onto the arm of the couch, looking from father to brother, sensing something deeper than a family argument. The old man's fingers trembled slightly as they traced the carvings on his walking stick. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tired. "There is something you don't know," he said. "Something I kept from both of you because I didn't want to burden you with it." Chima frowned. "What is that?" Chief Okoro swallowed, as if the truth was a bitter stone stuck in his throat. "In our lineage," he began, "there is an old prophecy, a belief passed down from your great-grandfather." He paused, gathering courage. "It says the firstborn son of our family will rise, but he will not last unless he shares his blessings with a sibling, especially a younger one." Chima blinked, unsure he heard correctly. "A prophecy? Papa, what does that have to do with my business?" "It has everything to do with it," Chief Okoro snapped, fear flickering in his eyes. "Your success is great, my son, greater than any in our family's history. But that makes you vulnerable. It means the prophecy is now in motion." Adaora gasped softly. Chima felt his heart thump harder, not in fear, but disbelief. So you want me to give Adaora the company because of an old story? Chief Okoro nodded slowly, gripping his walking stick as if it grounded him. You don't understand, he whispered. I watched my own father lose everything. I watched your uncle's business crumble overnight. Every first son in this family has faced downfall the moment he refused to share. His eyes glistened. I don't want that fate to touch you, Chima. That company, it has made you shine too brightly. And bright things attract danger. Chima leaned back, stunned. It wasn't greed. It wasn't favoritism. It wasn't manipulation from Adaora. It was fear. Deep generational fear. A fear his father carried alone for decades. Chima suddenly felt torn, caught between respecting his father's belief and protecting the legacy he built with his own suffering. Papa, he said softly, you think giving Adaora control will save me? Chief Okoro nodded, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. Yes, my son, I believe it will protect your destiny. And in that moment, Chima realized the war he was fighting had nothing to do with business. He was fighting fear older than himself. Fear his father believed more than logic, more than truth, and more than him. Later that night, long after the house had gone quiet and Chief Okoro retired to his room, a soft knock came on Chima's door. He sat on the edge of his bed, still processing everything, the prophecy, the ultimatum, the fear in his father's eyes. Who is it? Chima asked, his voice low. It's me, Adaora, she whispered. He opened the door and she slipped inside quickly, shutting it behind her. The hallway light cast a dim glow on her face, revealing her red eyes and trembling fingers. She looks like someone carrying a burden far too heavy for her small frame. Chima, she started, her voice cracking. Please, don't hate me. Chima sighed and rubbed his forehead. Adaora, I don't hate you. I'm just confused. All of this, it doesn't make sense. She nodded rapidly, tears gathering again. I know it doesn't, and I swear on everything I love, I never asked Papa for your business. I don't even want it. Chima's chest tightened. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, the desperation to be understood. Then why is he forcing him? He asked quietly. Adaora looked down, twisting her fingers together. For a long moment, she hesitated, as if revealing the truth might cause more damage than keeping quiet. Then she took a shaky breath. I think someone is manipulating him, she whispered. Chima frowned. Who? Adaora swallowed hard. His new wife, and that spiritual advisor she brought into the house. Chima's eyes widened. Adaora continued, her voice trembling. Ever since she came, Papa changed. He listens to her more than anyone. She tells him things about destiny, danger, spiritual attacks. And that prophet she brings, he keeps telling Papa that you're carrying a heavy star and that sharing your success is the only way to protect you. She clenched her fists. I think they've put fear in him, deep fear, the kind that makes him believe anything. Chima slowly sank into his chair, disbelief washing over him. So this wasn't just generational fear. It was manipulation, layers upon layers of it. Adaora knelt in front of him, grabbing his hands. Please, Chima, please don't think I had any part in this. Papa is listening to people who don't care about this family the way we do. A tear rolled down her cheek. I don't want your company. I want my brother, she whispered. I want my family back. Chima looked at her, really looked at her.
and felt something shift inside him. Anger melted into clarity. Confusion hardened into determination. He squeezed her hands gently. "We'll fix this," he said, "but not by fighting each other." Adaora nodded, relief breaking across her face. And together, in that dimly lit room, they silently vowed to uncover the truth and protect their family from the shadows creeping into it. The next morning, Chima stepped out of the house with a decision burning in his chest. He wasn't going to confront his father yet, not without proof, not without understanding exactly who was pulling the strings behind this madness. He headed straight to town, where one of his loyal staff, Uchenna, handed him a folder with trembling hands. "Oga, I don't know what is happening in your family, but someone has been asking too many questions about Chimex Tech Hub, especially your stepmother." Chima's jaw tightened. He took the folder and sat inside his car. With steady but tense fingers, he opened it, and his entire body froze. Inside were copies of emails, documents, and voice recordings that revealed a truth darker than he expected. His stepmother had been in contact with strangers, some businessmen, some suspiciously connected to her extended family. The emails showed her discussing asset liquidation, transfer of ownership, and ways to push Chima out once the company was no longer under his name. One message, short but lethal, read, "Once the company is in Adaora's name, we can control everything from behind. Sell the warehouses first, move funds quietly. By the time they notice, it will be too late."
Chima's heart pounded. His hands trembled as he scrolled through more evidence. Messages between the stepmother and the so-called spiritual advisor, planning how to instill fear in Chief Okoro. So it wasn't just manipulation. It was a planned takeover. A betrayal painted in smiles, prayers, and lies. Chima sank into the car seat, dazed. His mind replayed every moment, how his father suddenly became paranoid, how the stepmother started hovering around him, whispering into his ear like a shadow that refused to leave. She wanted Adora's name on the company, not because she cared about Adora, but because she saw her as the perfect puppet, a gentle girl who wouldn't question anything until it was too late. Chima closed the folder, anger rising in him like fire. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't think, but one thought stood firm. They want to steal everything I built. His phone buzzed suddenly. It was Adora. "Chima, please come home," she said quickly. "Papa is asking for you. He says the prophet is coming this evening to finalize the destiny cleansing. I'm scared." Chima's blood boiled. They were planning to seal the trap today. He gripped the steering wheel, eyes burning with determination. "No," he said softly but firmly. "Today we expose them." He turned the car sharply and headed back home, not as a son begging for understanding, but as a man ready to confront betrayal and protect everything he fought to build. The house felt heavier than ever when Chima returned. Every corner seemed tinted by whispers of deceit, every shadow a reminder of betrayal. He confronted his father in the living room, folder in hand, proof of the stepmother's plot laid bare. "Papa, look at this." Chima's voice trembled, but his eyes were sharp. "It's all here. She doesn't care about Adora. She wants the company. She wants to control everything through her." Chief Okoro's face twisted in disbelief. "How dare you accuse your mother, your stepmother, like that?" he bellowed. "I raised you to respect elders, Chima. Are you saying I'm blind? Are you disrespecting your father?"
Chima's heart sank. He had hoped the evidence would open his father's eyes, but the old man's pride and fear overpowered reason. "Papa, I'm only trying to protect our family, protect you, protect Adora," Chima pleaded, but the words hit deaf ears. Adora stood nearby, tears streaming silently down her face. She wanted to speak, to tell their father the truth, but loyalty to him and fear of anger kept her mute. The argument escalated, voices echoing through the house. The air was thick with anger, pain, and unspoken truths. Every attempt Chima made to reason was met with sharp words, accusations, and cold dismissal. Finally, with a heavy heart, Chima backed away, his shoulders slumping. "If you won't see the truth, Papa, then I have no choice," he said quietly. He turned, stepping out of the house, the first time he had done so in years, leaving behind walls that had once felt like safety. Adara sank onto the staircase, sobbing quietly. Her heart ached for her brother, for her father, and for the family that was unraveling before their eyes. She felt torn, caught between obedience and loyalty, powerless to stop the fracture forming in the home they once called safe. Outside, Chima took a deep breath, feeling the sting of betrayal and heartbreak, but also the family he refused to let fall completely apart. Weeks passed, heavy and bitter. Chima kept his distance, focusing on the business he nearly lost. Yet every night he lay awake replaying his father's angry words. Adora called often, her voice cracking as she begged him to come home, but the wounds were too fresh, too deep. Then, one evening, Adora's frantic call shattered the fragile wall Chima had built around himself. "Chima, Papa has collapsed." Chima froze, the phone slipping slightly in his grip. "What? How? Where are you?" "We're at St. Mary's Hospital. Please come, please." He didn't hesitate. He rushed out, his heart beating painfully fast. All the anger, the betrayal, the arguments, none of it mattered now. All he saw in his mind was his father's face, aging, stubborn, but still the man who raised him. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Adora pacing outside the emergency ward, her eyes swollen from crying. "What did they say?" he asked, breathless. "The doctor said it's stress," she whispered. "High blood pressure, emotional trauma. They said he broke down from everything happening in the house." Chima shut his eyes, guilt washing over him in waves. The doctor approached them. "His condition is stable for now," he said, "but he needs peace. Whoever or whatever has been stressing him must stop. His heart can't handle more conflict." Adora nodded, choking back tears. Chima swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Can we see him?" the doctor said. "Just one person at a time," the doctor said. Adora went in first, while Chima waited in the hallway. But something felt off. Too quiet, too empty. The air carried a strange tension. Nurses whispered to each other, glancing down the corridor. Chima frowned. "Where is?" she finally asked. Adora came out moments later, wiping her tears. "I've been calling her since morning. Her phone is switched off." Chima felt a sharp sting in his chest. "You mean Papa's wife isn't here?" Adora shook her head. "She left this morning, packed some bags. Even the prophet is gone. I think they ran away." It hit her like cold water. The moment their scheme was threatened, the stepmother fled, leaving the same man she pretended to protect lying vulnerable in a hospital bed. Chima felt anger rising, but also clarity. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was abandonment. Proof of everything he had tried to warn his father about. He stepped into the ward, seeing his father pale and fragile, hooked up to machines. For the first time in years, Chief Okoro looked small, human, breakable. Chima sat beside him, gently taking his hand. "Papa, I'm here," he whispered. Whether his father heard him or not, Chima didn't know. But he stayed, because despite the hurt, despite the betrayal, family was still family. And this was the beginning of a truth his father could no longer run from. The quiet beep of the heart monitor echoed softly in the hospital room. Chima sat beside his father's bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest. The man who once stood like a lion in their home now looked fragile, humbled, almost childlike. For the first time in weeks, Chief Okoro's eyes fluttered open. They were weak, dimmed by stress and betrayal, but when they settled on his son, something inside them broke. "Chima," he whispered, voice thin as thread. Chima leaned forward. "Papa, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." A tear slipped down the old man's cheek. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but emotion swallowed his words. Chima squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay, Papa. Rest. I'm right here." But Chief Okoro shook his head weakly. "No, I must talk. I must say the truth." Chima's heart pounded. The old man's fingers tightened around his. "My son, I wronged you." He swallowed hard, fighting his own shame. "I allowed fear to control me. I allowed strangers to fill my head with lies. That prophet, that woman, they saw my weakness, they used it, and I let them turn me against my own blood." Chima felt a lump rise in his throat. He had waited so long to hear those words, yet hearing them now, spoken through pain, hurt far deeper than the anger ever did. "I thought I was protecting you," his father continued, voice breaking, "but I was destroying you. I pushed you away. I doubted you. His lips trembled. "I almost lost you." Chima bowed his head, fighting back tears. "Papa, I didn't want your wealth. I didn't want your approval for the business. I only wanted your trust, your belief in me. That was all." Chief Okoro let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, my son. From the bottom of my heart, forgive me." Chima rose slowly, leaned forward, and embraced his father carefully so as not to disturb the tubes and wires. "I forgive you," he whispered into his father's shoulder. "I never stopped loving you. I never stopped being your son." For a long moment, father and son stayed locked in that fragile embrace, two hearts that had been torn apart by fear, slowly stitching themselves back together. When Chima finally pulled back, he saw a light returning to his father's eyes, a light of clarity, a light of truth, and for the first time in a long while, a light of hope. Chief Okoro's recovery was slow, but the clarity in his heart came quickly. The very next week, still seated in his hospital bed with his hand wrapped in Chima's, he asked for the family lawyer. "Prepare the documents," he said firmly. "Everything concerning Chimex Tech Hub goes back to my son. No interference, no conditions." The lawyer nodded, surprised by the old man's sudden decisiveness. Chima looked at his father, humbled. "Papa, thank you." Chief Okoro shook his head. "No, my son, I should be thanking you for not giving up on this family, even when I did." When the papers were signed, Chima felt something heavy lift from his spirit. The business was his again, not because he fought for it, but trust had finally been restored. Adora visited later that day, entering the room with a shy smile. "So, big brother, guess what?" Chima raised a brow. "What?" "I've decided to start something of my own," she said, her eyes sparkling with a newfound confidence. "A small fashion business, nothing big, for now." Chima laughed softly. "You don't even like business." "I didn't," she admitted, "but after everything that happened, I want to build something too. Not because of a prophecy, not because of pressure, but because I finally believe in myself." Chima smiled proudly. "And you're not doing it alone. I'll support you every step of the way." Adora hugged him tightly, tears of relief rolling down her cheeks. It wasn't just a hug, it was a silent promise that the bond they almost lost would never be taken for granted again. When Chief Okoro saw his children embracing, he exhaled deeply, as if releasing years of buried guilt and fear. "Unity," he whispered, this is what truly protects destiny." And in that modest hospital room, without prophets, without manipulation, without fear, the Okoro family began to heal, rebuild, and rediscover each other. Not through wealth, not through superstition, but through love. And so, the Okoro family entered a new season, one born not from perfection, but from the ashes of their mistakes. Chief Okoro left the hospital weeks later, moving slower, speaking softer, and listening more. The weight of his wrong choices still lived in his eyes, but beside him always was Chima, steady, patient, and willing to walk with him through the rebuilding. Their conversations, once filled with tension and pride, now carried honesty and vulnerability. For the first time in years, father and son truly saw each other.
Adawara visited them often, her small business slowly growing, fueled not by greed, but by a desire to prove something to herself, that she could rise without being used as a pawn. She and Chima became closer than ever, sharing late-night talks about dreams, fears, and the kind of family they wanted to rebuild. As for the stepmother, the world gave her the reward of her choices: isolation, shame, and the bitter memory of what she nearly destroyed. But Chima refused to let her bitterness define them. He had learned too much, endured too deeply to let anger poison their second chance. Standing in the company his father entrusted to him, Chima finally understood something he had missed for years. Leadership wasn't about power. Family wasn't about perfection. And forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was freedom. The Okoros didn't return to the way things were. They built something better, something honest, something earned. And in the quiet peace that settled over their home, one truth remained unshaken. In the battle between pride and love, choose love, for it is the only thing strong enough to heal what fear has broken.